Right now, the United States has military personnel in over 80 countries. It operates more than 750 bases on foreign soil. It has special forces deployed in 134 nations, and it spends over $55 billion every single year just to maintain that overseas presence. No empire in history has come close. Britain at its peak had garrisons in about 36 countries. Rome had legions in roughly 25 regions. The United States has troops in 80 and special forces in 134. But here's the thing, that presence isn't just about having soldiers everywhere. It's about a system, a carefully engineered machine of commands, alliances, bases and logistics that allows the US to project military power to virtually any point on Earth within hours. This is how that machine works. The first thing to understand is that the US military has carved up the entire planet into zones of responsibility. There are 6 geographic combatant commands, each one a 4-star general or admiral commanding all US military activity within their region, regardless of which branch of the military is involved. INDOPACOM, Indo-Pacific Command, is the largest. It covers over 100 million square miles, from the US west coast to the east coast of India. That's 52% of the Earth's surface. 375,000 US service members fall under its command. Japan alone hosts 52,000 US troops, the largest single concentration of American forces anywhere in the world. EUCOM, European Command, covers Europe and parts of Eurasia. Headquartered in Stuttgart, Germany, it works directly with NATO and manages the US response to Russia. After the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, the US surged an additional 80,000 troops into Europe. Germany alone hosts 34,500 American personnel at over 119 installations. CENTCOM, Central Command, covers the Middle East and Central Asia, 21 countries, 3 of the world's most critical shipping choke points: the Suez Canal, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Bab el-Mandeb. This is the command that has run almost every major American military conflict since it was founded in 1983. The Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan, and the ongoing operations against Houthi forces in the Red Sea. AFRICOM covers the African continent, SOUTHCOM covers Latin America, and NORTHCOM covers North America itself, including the defense of the continental United States. Together, these 6 commands divide every square mile of the planet between them. There is no country on Earth that does not fall under at least one of them. But geographic commands are only half the picture, because alongside them sit 5 functional commands that cut across all regions simultaneously. SOCOM, Special Operations Command, manages the special forces deployed across 134 countries. STRATCOM handles nuclear weapons and strategic deterrence. CYBERCOM manages digital warfare. TRANSCOM moves everything, troops, equipment, supplies, across the globe. And SPACECOM controls the satellites that make all of it possible. All these form a chain of command that runs from each 4-star commander directly to the Secretary of Defense, and then to the President. The US overseas base network is unlike anything else in the world. Britain, France, Russia, and China combined have fewer than 50 overseas military installations. The US has 750. These range from enormous to tiny. The largest overseas base, Camp Humphreys in South Korea, covers 3,454 acres. It has its own hospital, school system, golf course, bowling alley, and over 30,000 residents. Ramstein Air Base in Germany is the nerve center of American air power in Europe, over 9,000 personnel. The largest US military hospital outside the continental United States sits next door. It also serves as the critical relay station for US drone strikes across the Middle East and Africa. Without Ramstein, most of those operations would be impossible. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar is the largest US military installation in the Middle East. Over 10,000 personnel, it hosts the forward headquarters of CENTCOM and serves as the primary hub for air operations across the entire region. Diego Garcia, a tiny atoll in the middle of the Indian Ocean, sits roughly equidistant from the Persian Gulf, South Asia and Southeast Asia. It serves as a logistics hub and staging ground that allows the US to project power into 3 different regions simultaneously from a single point. The logic of the base network is about time. When a crisis emerges anywhere in the world, the US does not need to project power from its own territory. It projects from the nearest base. That cuts response time from days or weeks to hours. It means carrier strike groups, fighter squadrons, and ground forces can be repositioned and operational faster than any adversary can plan a response. It also means something less obvious. The mere existence of the bases changes behavior. A country that knows US forces are stationed next door faces a fundamentally different calculation than one where American power is thousands of miles away. The bases give the US reach, the alliances give it legitimacy, and multiply its effective power by a factor that no base network alone could achieve. NATO is the centerpiece. 32 member states, collective defense under Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all. The US accounts for roughly 70% of total NATO defense spending, but in return it gets something that money alone cannot buy: the permanent right to station forces across the European continent, integrated command structures with 31 allied militaries, and a shared intelligence network built over 75 years. In the Indo-Pacific, the alliance architecture is more fragmented. Rather than a single multilateral structure like NATO, the US has built a web of bilateral and small group alliances that together form what strategists call the hub and spoke system. Japan is the most critical spoke. The US-Japan Mutual Security Treaty gives the US basing rights across Japan's territory in exchange for a US commitment to defend Japan, including the use of nuclear weapons if necessary. South Korea operates under a similar framework. Together, those two alliances give the US the forward positioning it needs to deter China and contain North Korea. Then there is AUKUS, the 2021 trilateral security partnership between the US, UK, and Australia, its most consequential element. A commitment to help Australia acquire nuclear-powered submarines, giving the US a trusted ally with significant undersea capability positioned in the southern Indo-Pacific, directly relevant to any potential conflict over Taiwan or the South China Sea. The Quad, the US, Japan, Australia, and India, is a less formal but increasingly important grouping. It coordinates on intelligence, technology, maritime surveillance, and military exercises across the Indo-Pacific. India's size, geography, and growing military capability make it a pivotal partner for any US strategy in the region, even without the formal treaty commitments that bind Japan and Australia. What these alliances do, collectively, is something the base network alone cannot accomplish. They create shared stakes. When Japan hosts US forces, Japan is not just providing real estate, it is making itself a participant in US strategy, with its own interests now aligned. An adversary attacking US forces in Japan is simultaneously attacking Japan. That entanglement is precisely the point. The commands, the bases, the alliances, none of these work without the logistics that actually moves everything. US Transportation Command, TRANSCOM, is one of the least known and most essential organizations in the American military. Its mission is simple to state and staggering to execute: move any force anywhere on Earth as fast as possible. TRANSCOM operates a fleet of military aircraft, C-17 Globemasters, C-5 Galaxies, capable of airlifting heavy equipment including tanks and artillery anywhere in the world within 72 hours. It contracts with commercial airlines and cargo carriers to supplement military capacity during surges. It coordinates sea lift through a fleet of pre-positioned ships loaded with equipment that can be dispatched to any coastline. Pre-positioning is one of the most important and least discussed elements of US military logistics. Across the globe, the US maintains stocks of equipment, tanks, ammunition, fuel, medical supplies, preloaded onto ships or stored at bases, precisely so that troops can fly in light and marry up with their equipment in theatre, rather than waiting for it to be shipped from home. The Afloat Prepositioning Force maintains ships loaded with an entire Marine Expeditionary Brigade's worth of equipment, sailing in the Indian Ocean at any given time. The satellite network managed by Spacecom underpins all of it: GPS navigation, encrypted communications, intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance across every theatre, early warning of ballistic missile launches. Without the satellite layer, the combatant commands lose their ability to coordinate, the logistics chain loses its precision, and the alliance network loses its shared intelligence backbone. Space has become, in the language of military planners, the fourth domain of warfare after land, sea and air. The system described so far, combatant commands, joint operations, a unified chain of command, did not always exist, and understanding why it was built reveals something important about how the machine actually functions. For most of American military history, the different branches, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, operated largely independently. Each had its own command structure, its own procurement, its own doctrine. Coordination between them was difficult, slow, and frequently chaotic. The consequences were visible and sometimes catastrophic. In 1980, the The attempt to rescue American hostages in Iran, Operation Eagle Claw, failed partly because Army helicopters, Navy planning, and Air Force support were so poorly coordinated that the mission collapsed before reaching its objective. In the 1983 invasion of Grenada, Army and Marine units on the same island had radios that couldn't communicate with each other. A Navy pilot reportedly called in an airstrike using a credit card from a payphone because he had no other way to reach the Army artillery unit he needed. In 1986, Congress passed the Goldwater-Nichols Act. It is, without exaggeration, the most important reform in American military organization since the Second World War. Goldwater-Nichols restructured the chain of command so that the combatant commanders, not the individual service chiefs, had operational authority. An Army general commanding CENTCOM could direct Navy ships, Air Force planes, and Marine units without going through 3 separate service bureaucracies. The services retained responsibility for training, equipping, and organizing their forces. But once those forces deployed, they answered to the combatant commander. It also required officers to serve in joint assignments, working alongside other branches, before being promoted to senior rank. The first major test of the new structure was the 1991 Gulf War. General Norman Schwarzkopf commanded a coalition that included Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and forces from 34 allied nations, all coordinated through a single joint command structure. The American way of war is not just about weapons or technology. It is about a system, 6 geographic commands that divide the planet between them, each with a 4-star commander who controls every branch of the military in their region. 11 commands total, geographic and functional, coordinated through a chain of command that reaches directly to the president. 750 bases in 80 countries providing forward presence and logistics infrastructure. Alliances that multiply effective power and create shared stakes across every major region. A logistics system capable of moving an armoured brigade to any coastline within days, and a satellite network that ties it all together in real time. No other country has built anything remotely close to this. China is developing rapidly. It has 1 overseas base in Djibouti and is building toward more. Russia has a handful of forward positions, mostly Soviet-era legacy. The US has 750 bases, 11 commands, and a $900 billion annual defense budget. The system is not without costs. It costs $55 billion a year just to maintain the overseas bases. It creates entanglements that can pull the US into conflicts that a smaller power could avoid. But the core logic has held for 80 years. The US learned from 2 world wars that threats allowed to develop unchallenged eventually become existential. Forward presence, alliances, and a military organized to project power globally are the answer that American strategy settled on. And the system built to deliver that answer is, whatever you think of it, one of the most sophisticated pieces of military engineering in history. When the US goes to war, it does not simply send troops. It activates a machine that has been running continuously since 1945, constantly positioned, constantly coordinated, constantly ready. That machine is what this video has been about.